Okay, I'm going to try this for the 7th time. This is part 2 on um, the day I knew I believed. Now, the last part, we were in the ambulance. And I apologize for getting so emotional, but it had been a long time since I had talked about it in detail. But I was in the ambulance with my eldest son. Now, both children were under the age of 10, one under the age of 5, okay? But I was in the ambulance with my eldest son, and we got to the hospital. It was a little over an hour, maybe an hour and a half at the most. They took him straight into triage, and I went into the waiting room, and I stayed there. And I think they finally came and told me that he was stable enough that I could go in there every so many hours to see him. And I did as much as I could and was allowed to. Now, this is Monday morning. We got there about, I don't know, I remember seeing 4 a.m. This all started at 10 o'clock at night. But my sister showed up. You know, there were couches and chairs, or you get a chair and you put another chair together to make a bed. It's that kind of thing. We just stayed in there. I did not sleep at all. At all. Next day, Monday, it was a whole lot of waiting and wait to see. He was in a coma. And then Tuesday, I was in ICU because that's where they finally brought him. And I had been around so many people and talking, and my family was there. They showed up. I had a brother fly down. I had a brother call me from a ship. He was in the military. He had to get special permission. I know he called me twice, maybe more. My sister called. I have a ton of siblings, and I'm the eldest. But I was, of course, overwhelmed. And I just was on autopilot. Just plainly on autopilot. From the moment it started at the last hospital, somehow one of my brother-in-laws got there, and I was outside waiting for them to get there. And when they showed up, and my oldest came out, and he was vomiting out of the ambulance, vomiting blood, I remember saying, "Oh my God," and I almost went to my knees, and he grabbed me from behind, and he said, "Not now, not now." And from that moment on, I just sucked it up. It wasn't about me. So, let's go to Tuesday. Still haven't slept. I'm in ICU. And a nurse comes to me and says that my other son is en route. And my mouth dropped open, and he realized I didn't know. So I went behind the nurse's station and called the pediatrician. Turns out he had been vomiting, and they didn't know why. They thought they saw a bubble on the CT scan in his abdominal area, so something had been lacerated. And they didn't know what, so exploratory surgery was going to be necessary. So I had 2 children in ICU. after that, I had to get out. Of there. I had gone in by myself with my oldest son and cried with my head down on the bed near his hand. There isn't much room in there. I finally went to the temple, the church, in the hospital, and nobody was in there. And I sat down in one of the little pews and was trying to bargain with God that He miraculously make them better and give it all to me. Save them and take me. And then I knew what was happening. I knew my eldest. We didn't even know if his eye worked until right before then. We had to force his right eye open. His face was recessed from the collision and the car accident on the right side and swollen like a softball. When we opened the eye socket, his eye actually responded to the light of the flashlight. So we knew there was hope he would be able to keep the eye. But that was the least of my worries. I was worried he'd be stuck in a body and unable to communicate or know and be himself, but his body wouldn't cooperate and he would know things were different. He could have had physical problems, mental problems, all kind of problems, sight problems, hearing problems, you name it. He could end up being a vegetable. So I finally got down on my hands and knees in the front and begged God if He couldn't give him back to me the way he was, then to please take him, because I knew he was better off with him. Because he didn't deserve this. No child does. No human being. But, I offered him my son. There's a lot of emotions that go with that. But it was true and it was heartfelt. I went back to the ICU and the nurses had told me he had woken up. He didn't say much, but he had woken up. They also let me know he'd be combative because the damage was in the right frontal orbital area. And when your brain is swollen, you can get mean. Changes your personality. So I sat there and waited, hoping he would wake up, and he did. And I was trying to think of what to ask him, and it just came to me. I go by my middle name. I've never gone by my first name, but he knew what my first name was. It just wasn't mentioned all the time at all. So I told him I'd leave him alone, and he could go back to sleep if he would just answer one question. And he said, "What?" with an attitude, not his normal sweet character. And I said, "Baby, what's Mama's first name?" And he said it. And I knew there was hope that he might be there mentally. Physical was still another ball game, too. But that one question is not everything, but it gave me hope. My other son, Wednesday, right after lunch sometime, and I haven't slept. I can't sleep. He went in for exploratory surgery. Turned out it was his appendix, which we don't need, and a small section of his small intestine. So they cut a foot out just to be safe and put it back together, which is one of the easier organs to deal with. He's fine. My youngest was fine. So 2 weeks he went home. My other son, I was there another 2 to 3 weeks. I think 3. And then we went back 9 months later for reconstructive surgery. When he went back to school, I got permission for him to wear a baseball hat. Kids are cruel. Cruel. He went from one of the most popular kids to ostracized. Broke my heart. But the good news is he's turned out to be a great young man. But he still has so many difficulties. He has epilepsy, and he has grand mal seizures, and his medicine costs a fortune. $80,000 every two years. And I got him in a program with the